Hello and welcome back to another episode of Early Bird Anime with Meg and Dan.
I'm Meg.
And I'm Dan. And today, I'm really confused. I think I lost a few motor skills, a few memories. But that's unrelated because today we watched Katte ni Kaizou. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Kaizou.
Kaizou. It's called Gym. We watched the show that's called Gym. It's a show that is not for the kids. It ain't for the kids, yo. And so be warned by that, because you can't just not watch a show that's for the kids. I don't know. Like I said, I'm confused. Meg, would you like to give us a little background on Cattle no Catalolo?
You mean a show called Jim?
A show called Gym.
Okay. Well, the actual title is Katte ni Kaizou, which translates roughly to arbitrary Kaizou. Kaizou is the name of the main character and also a pun on remodeling or upgrades. It was a 26-volume manga series by Kumeta Koji, which ran from 1998 to 2004 in the magazine Shonen Sunday. Its abrupt cancellation resulted in the author switching to the publishing company Kodansha, where he published his other well-known series called Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei, which is Goodbye Mr. Despair, which is about a school teacher who takes cynicism to the extreme. Zetsubo Sensei was the first of Kumeta's works that got an anime adaptation, which was done by Studio Shaft in 2007 and directed by Shinbo Akiyuki. Katte ni Kaizou's 6-episode OVA adaptation in 2011 was from the same studio and director, which you might also recognize that combination from Quella Magi Madoka Magica. The series did not get an official English release, and the manga apparently went through a lot of evolution in terms of art style, which ultimately settled into the style that Kumeta used for Zetsubo Sensei, and is also the art style that the OVA uses as well, probably to garner recognition factor. Interestingly enough, and this is just stuff that I noticed while watching this OVA series, is that the anime had other stylistic similarities to Zetsubo Sensei. It used some of the same bell chimes, it had a musically similar type of opening theme, the kind of little mini sketches in the form of joke previews and trailers between some of the larger sketches. So, Daniel, why don't you tell us about the, general plot, if you could call it that, of Katte ni Kaizou?
So, Katsu Kaizou is a normal high school boy, except for the fact that he's a cyborg hero built by his classmate, except for another fact that he is not, and that is just a delusion of his, except for another fact that he's been involved with many cases causing a bunch of people to become violent, various perverts and tricksters, and there's a lot of things going on in this show.
Bunch of weirdos.
Weirdos, to throw out a judgmental word, but a truthful one nonetheless. He has various misadventures with his friends in the Science Investigation Club as they solve mysteries, such as the case of gorilla poets, nudist gorilla poets, I might add, or the mystery of the school swim trunks, or who got the erection in the pool, that sort of thing. They also engage in truly philosophical discussions, such as questioning the determined complacency of society in a world where nothing is truly certain. A lot of artsy-fartsy stuff that I didn't like. But that's not my turn yet. Meg, how did you like Katsu no Kite no Katte ni Kaizou?
Kookaburra.
Kookaburra, hey, yeah, that's a good one. That reminds me of Gullah Gullah Island.
Well, first off, I think I should probably say that I'm a pretty big fan of Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei. I watched that back in high school and really enjoyed it. And because this has a similar comedy style, which kind of makes sense given that it's by the same person, I did enjoy the style of humor of the sketches and just bizarre characters in bizarre situations and having bizarre conversations. I like seeing characters just kind of talking and just having these really random discussions that kind of get so specific in a way that you wouldn't really think that would be specific. Like, you have one girl who can't read the mood of a room, and so she's like a buzzkill, she's a party killer, she'll say really insensitive stuff without realizing it, or thrust herself into people on dates. The main character, Kaizou, is trying to tell her, okay, well, let's practice. He makes a face, what do you think I'm feeling right now? And she guesses something some, vague thing, and he's like, no, I'm waiting in line for a dating sim, even though, I already pre-ordered it, and she's just like, how am I supposed to guess that? I don't know, I think that kind of thing is kind of funny. That said, The pacing in the first episode was really crazy, to say the least. It really just threw you in without any rhyme or reason and no ease in aside from this little mini narration you got at the end of the opening theme.
Let's start with the positives of the show. I think the show had a good opening sequence, opening theme song as well. I actually thought it was pretty good. I think the closing theme wasn't that bad either. I think it's up to interpretation whether or not you like the sequence, but that's another story.
Right.
I think the concept of the show that you were saying you get from the closing of the opening theme is that the main character is a cyborg hero that is on a quest to, pretty much rid the world of injustice, except that he's really just a high school boy. And I saw that and I thought that is a really interesting concept for a TV show or even just a story in general. And so I was initially on board for it that way. However, yeah, I think the first episode really sabotaged itself because I thought I missed something because there's so much going on within the first few minutes of the show, and it's just it's moving really fast. There's a lot of random, bizarre things and very nonsensical as well, and that for me was very jarring and made me not be into the show. And I think I was questioning a lot whether or not it's an issue of myself or the actual pacing of the show, because I think that maybe you need to be eased into a show that's that crazy, or maybe another approach is to hit you in the face with its craziness and say, no, we're not going to compromise. This is how crazy we are. But
Right.
there's a lot of random and just bizarre humor, a lot of scatological humor, vulgar humor, and I think my main problem with that was that it didn't really amount to anything. It was just like, we'll throw a naked girl in here. We'll throw a guy's penis in here. We'll have 3 guys in a butt train going down the street because why not?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I look back and I think I wanted to like this show given the ending of that credits where they talk about the boy being a cyborg. And there are little glimmers of what I would have liked the show to be, and then maybe that's my problem too, is that too much of it was I wanted the show to be this. I wanted the show to cater to my interests, and it didn't. But I also think that in general, I just didn't find it to be a very strong show.
Well, it definitely did give kind of a false promise of what it was going to be about.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
you have this character who's set up as he deludes himself into thinking that he's a cyborg hero. And then over the whole 6 episodes, that fact actually comes into play maybe twice. And so you kind of lose that aspect of his character. And without that aspect of his character, he's really pretty lackluster and not very memorable. Like, he's just some guy that people like for no reason because he doesn't really have a personality outside of that, you know?
Yeah, and I think when you say twice, do you mean 2 times in an actual episode? Or like in 2 episodes, or twice meaning like twice ever?
I meant like 2 instances, and maybe there were 1 or 2 others that I'm forgetting, but there was the time where he was afraid to go swimming because he thought that cyborgs would rust, so he made his classmate like strap a pen or
Upgrade him.
something onto his chest as an upgrade, and he was like, "Cool, now I can swim." And then, what was the other time?
The other time was, you know what, I don't even remember. That's another problem I have with the show, is that there's a lot of, because of the format of the show is that one episode is maybe 3 skits on average, maybe. I call them skits because that's how they feel to me. They come off as very wait for the punchline, and my problem with that is a lot of the times the punchline is almost a lack of punchline.
Mhm.
Like in one episode, you have a setup of the people with all the delusions. They have all these delusions, and it turns out that our main character, I keep calling him my main character because I don't feel like calling him by his name that I can't pronounce. But our main character set up this cult of weirdos, and now it's time to confront them and take them down once and for all. So they has like this band of weirdos following him, and they're all talking about how they're gonna take down the delusions and what their delusions are. And then one kid trips and falls and breaks his glasses, and then they like bury him because he died, and that's the end of the episode. Not even the episode, the skit rather. And I just looked at that and was really annoyed because you set up this whole thing for a short amount of time. It's not like it was built up throughout a series. If it was built up throughout a series, I'd be even more mad. But
Right.
it's like, okay, we're building this episode to be this, and then it just makes a right turn and says, no, we're this now. And it's not a situation where it's like, I got you, pulled the rug out from under you.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the show is focusing itself on being weird, random, and silly, but it's not the right kind of silliness, and it's not the right kind of random, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, even as someone who did enjoy it overall, there were definitely a lot of hit and miss segments.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite parts were when the characters were discussing some topic in a way that you wouldn't really expect them to discuss it. And that is really what I like about Zetsubo Sensei, is they talk about all these different cultural phenomena, social phenomena in ways that you don't really expect it. I definitely think that the, I guess, sexual humor was not really funny.
It's just not. Like, it doesn't fit, in my opinion, because it's like, well, we're gonna put in a penis because we want to.
Right.
Whereas the only other show that I was speaking to you about before we recorded that I could compare this to was I watched the anime Golden Boy at one point. That's a 6-episode series as well, based on a manga that is very raunchy. It's got a lot of nudity, and the main character keeps getting erections. We'll have to watch it someday because I actually did enjoy it. But I think I was saying part of the reason I enjoyed it was because the vulgar adult humor was tailored into the show and fit well.
Right.
Whereas this, it was like, oh, this main character is a pervert, therefore we're going to have a motor shoved up his ass and have him bleed through his butt. Kind of gross, and not in the good way.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't mean to poo-poo scatological humor, and pun intended, but I like, I like vulgar humor sometimes, but it has to be done right. Like, it's sort of like a 12-year-old, or if any of you out there have younger siblings who just found out they can curse, it's like when someone's like, effing this and that, blah, blah. It's like you're just saying it because you know you're going to get a reaction out of someone. That's what this show sort of felt like to me with its vulgar humor. And they toned it down a lot more.
Yeah, definitely.
Later episodes. But it's like the first 2 episodes was like, wow, okay. And also keep in mind that the closing theme is put to a weird montage of the loser pervert kid having underwear thrown on his face and trying to chase down his naked classmates and stuff.
Yeah.
So it doesn't escape it, but I think it definitely... it finds as much of a foothold as it can for a show of that nature.
Right.
I mean, overall, I think I wasn't too impressed, but like you were saying, the parts where the characters were talking were actually kind of interesting. And I think it was really funny that I don't like this show. And then I walked away thinking, I learned something at least. Like the episode where the fashion sensei comes and he's telling everyone, oh, you know what this was originally worn for? It's sailors wore scarves so they can kind of pop their collars so they could hear each other better. And I watched that at first. I'm like, that's got to be BS. And maybe it was. I didn't fact check, but he was making very convincing points. And I'm going to fact check them later, but it was very interesting. There are other episodes
also
like
there's
that
the
too.
fact. Also, there's the fact that that guy was just being a massive elitist asshole.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no doubt about that. But the main issue here is that there are many interesting discussions, whether or not they were true or not, and
Yeah,
that would
definitely.
actually be that's actually a very interesting thing to have these conversations, whether or not they're true or not. It's almost like that game Boulder Dash, where you have to guess whether or not the person you're talking to is lying about the prompt they were given.
Right.
They have to make the best case argument for you to finally say, yeah, I believe you.
Right. I'm gonna put Zetsubo Sensei on our list for some time, because that is definitely better than this show, I think. And it does a lot of that. There's so much discourse about oh, this is a trend that people do. Like this is a trend that people have.
It sort of reminded me of Cromartie High School a little bit. They didn't really do that much, but they would have these very offbeat conversations about whatever and anything.
Yeah.
Like, what is like the one guy, the episode in Cromartie High School where he's trying to dissect what makes comedy, and he's like,
Right.
I need to be more open. I need to be a part of the fan club. And he's like,
Right.
I don't know why everyone likes this show. I really like that. So I at first when you said that, oh, the conversation's really funny, I in a way I disagreed, but now I can see that those parts are actually really funny. And one of my other favorite episodes of this series, I think maybe the best segment besides maybe the swimming pool, because the swimming pool gets a little bit too ridiculous for me at
Right.
times, but the episode where it turns out one of the classmates who's like the professor that the main character thinks created him used to be a part of this duo girl group representing, what was it, the east and the west of Japan, or the north and the south?
East and west.
East and west. And like this girl's like, I gotta track her down and ruin her life because she ruined our career as a singing duo. And they
As
have
idols.
this funny back and forth about the differences between the Kansai region of Japan and the Tokyo region of Japan, and how, oh, you guys eat rice as a side dish to this meal that also includes rice. That's silly. Or she said sup. That's how it said it in the dub, at least.
Yeah,
It's
she
like,
was
oh.
speaking in Kansai dialect.
Oh yeah, so that was really interesting, and they had this like funny exchange back and forth, and that's how the villain was defeated. And I think that goes back to my complaint that this show had a lot of setups to be a conventional show, like a Western kind of cartoon. And I thought about it, how the cartoons I like don't necessarily need this huge overarching storyline going on. A lot of my
Right.
favorite cartoons are just everyday happenings. The thing is that they're just weird, or the characters are animals, or it's set in space or something weird. And this show could have been that. It could have been about a bunch of kids who are weird, and the main character thinks that he's a cyborg. And that still would have worked. And I think the bizarre humor could have worked in it, but it worked against itself because it wanted to be very short little segments and skits in a 24-minute episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it could have been a very good if they like wanted to focus on one skit and just stretch that out a little bit more. And you could include things from all the other skits in it too, possibly. But having maybe this episode's about the poets who are naked, even though I did not like that storyline. Having a setup of this kid needs to find out who these people are, why they're doing this, how can we defeat them, all this build up to how evil they are, and then having it just be their weaknesses, you just kick them in the nuts.
Uh-huh.
Like that would have been great, but the problem was that there was just so much happening within 4 minutes
Yeah.
that I'm like, you guys need to stop. You're overloading my brain.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm still trying to grab onto the fact that these guys wear jars around their penises and recite poetry, and it's already over.
Yeah. No, definitely. That first bit threw you in way too fast. I think.
Maybe I pick in on the first episode too much, but honestly, I think throughout the series, it's hard to really. I'm having trouble remembering a lot of segments, so I think that's a credit to it.
Right. I don't think that the short skit format is really a problem, but I do think that the characters were definitely pretty lackluster. They had some standout traits to them, but that weren't really utilized that much. Or if they were, they weren't utilized in a very good way. And yeah, I don't know how much else we can say about it.
Yeah, there's really not that much else to say. The series is 6 episodes long, right? I think there's only 6.
Yeah, it's 6.
Each are 24 episodes, so they're pretty short. So if
6
you
episodes,
wanted
24 minutes.
Sorry, 24 minutes. If you wanted to, you could easily watch this in an afternoon.
Yeah.
And I won't say it's the worst thing I've ever watched. I was just sort of let down by many things.
Yeah.
And it only got a couple chuckles out of me.
Yeah.
You know, in my opinion, a show's purpose is just to entertain me, and entertain doesn't mean to make me laugh, to make me cry. It's just I want to maybe ignore reality for 24 minutes and have a different experience. And this one just made me be like, oh, I can't wait to be done with this. But I think that wraps it up for this episode.
I think so.
If you have a different opinion, or maybe a same opinion, any opinion really, you can leave a comment below, or If you like what we said, leave a like. And if you love us, but like in a platonic way, you could subscribe because we would appreciate that. Because, well, I would appreciate that. That's just me. Yeah, we are the Discount Ramblepants.
And remember, excess delusions are extremely dangerous. So be careful out there.
Be careful and make sure you don't get cornered in an alley by naked dudes, because they'll definitely read poetry to you, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the end. Bye-bye.